Okay, so for this lesson, we're mostly focusing on displaying data. In our course, we're more concerned about applications of data. It's understood you'll probably often have either a computer or some sort of software that you're going to be using just to break down the data points. So we're just going to break down a couple of graphs here, and then you're going to try one from the practice as well. So for this displaying data portion, we're looking at a few different types of data. The first is categorical. So these are things that are types, they're not necessarily numbers. The best example that we can provide is asking people what their favorite color is. Your answer is blue or green. It's not going to be 2, 4, that type of thing. Continuous is data that it says can have a finite or infinite interval. The easiest way to put it, though, is that the number can either contain a decimal or it can be expressed as a fraction. So, for example, I could be 1.65 meter tall. There's a decimal in there. That right away is continuous. We could go even finer if we wanted to add additional decimal points. Discrete is just numbers that can be counted. So some of these terms are they contain a little bit of confusing terminology. Basically, to summarize, discrete, whole numbers. Continuous can have decimals. That's the easiest way to think about it. So when we're looking at example 1, we're actually talking about John. So John is someone who has a job at a music store. This actually also kind of ties into finance, which is nice. He has a whole bunch of different expenses and different amounts. So this is kind of like his monthly budget, I guess you could say. So our first step, nice and easy, we're just creating a bar graph. Everyone's done it in middle school. We're going to go back to the basics. First and foremost, you might want to put a title on it. Okay, so all I did there, I just wrote John's expenses. You have expenses and you have amounts. So thinking about it, you're in a one variable statistic zone. You're only looking at money in dollars. So what we're going to put on the bottom is our independent variable. Now, it's not that the amount's dependent, but it needs to be categorized before we're able to tie an amount to it. Easiest way to do this is just to label the bottom. What I'm going to do is I'm going to abbreviate it so it's a little bit easier to see. Entertainment will be C. CL will be clothing. CP will be cell phone. Lunch is L. Transportation and rent. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 categories. We're going to go nice and easy and just start by labeling. So we're going to have entertainment. We had clothing. We had cell phone, I believe. Yep, cell phone. We had lunch, transportation, and rent. So on the bottom, we could label this type of expense, I feel like makes sense. Okay, it's always good to have lots of headers and just practice your skills. So types of expense are on the bottom. On the side, we have dollar amounts. Okay, so your grid's already set up for you, and the reason being is in most circumstances in life, I mean, you're gonna have some kind of template outline for you. On Excel, it's gonna do it automatically, so that's just kind of understood there. So we're gonna go through and just basically make bar graphs. Now pay attention to the amounts, which I'm just highlighting on the right-hand side. So you're gonna take each of those individual bars and you're just gonna draw a bar graph just like you did in middle school. So entertainment is $100. Okay, you can use different colors to shade it in. Okay, so especially if you're doing it by hand, it will probably be a little bit easier than mine. Hopefully this is clear enough for you. 225 is clothing. So we're gonna go all the way up to 225. Okay, it's up to you if you want to use different colors, use the same one. I sometimes get a little bit overwhelmed by all the colors. I find it easier just to use one, but however you'd like to do that, if you have some little system there, that's fine. 'Cell phone is $50. Okay, so you're sure everyone is more artistic than myself. Lunch, 75. Okay, notice that you're going up by increments of $25. So this is a very, very friendly scale. On Excel or Google Sheets, we'll manipulate it to how easy or how difficult we would like the scale. We run into a slight problem with transportation because it is $80. So you're going to eyeball it. We understand that 75 to 100 is where it's going to land. It's just going to be slightly a hair over 75. So maybe right there. Okay, if you take a ruler out, I'm probably not exact. We're just trying to get a general ballpark here. Just so we can see visually, transportation is a little bit more than lunch. And last but not least is rent. Rent is just a standard $150. That is a very cheap rent. Okay, must live with a lot of people. There we go. So that's our bar graph. Notice a couple of things. So the width of the bars are all just 1 square big. It doesn't matter if you use 2 or 3 squares, but they all have to be consistently the same width. If you start doing like 1, 2, 3, it's too confusing. Visually, you should be able to easily compare all the amounts. Another thing is too, the scale always goes up by the same amount each time. So for this one, it's going up by $25 every single time. That's how you create a bar graph. This is the question that we're going to be doing on Google Sheets. The next part is actually asking you to work with a pie chart, which is something that you're used to. It says circle graph, but pie chart, same thing. Pie graph, however you want to describe it. So we have the exact same stuff. We have all of his expenses and all of his amounts. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to come up with a percent and then a measure of the angle. Now, I'm going to freehand it. I'm just going to warn you right away. If you use protractor, it probably won't be exact. But we're going to, again, just kind of ballpark it roughly to the percentage. First and foremost, in order to find what percent entertainment is to the total, we need the total value. So I'm going to add a total down here, and our total is just taking all of the expenses and adding them up. So 100 plus 225 plus 50 and so on. Now I'm getting that my total is $680. When we are finding his percent with his budget for John, so we are going to do a couple of things. We are going to take the amount divided by the total, and to get the percent, we're going to multiply by 100. I get a little bit overwhelmed by that. So if you would like to just do amount divided by total, you're going to get a decimal that we can easily turn into a percent. So, for example, entertainment, 100 over 680. Okay. We get 0.15. Okay, or roughly about 15%. I'm someone who really likes decimals. However, there's going to be people that probably don't. You're going to use whatever method is best for you. So I'm going to go through all these expenses super quick. And I'm just going to take them and convert based on the total. So this will take me a minute here. You can follow along. So again, we have 50 divided by 680. Okay, be careful with place value. So 0.07 is 7%. Okay, got 3 more expenses. Let's do it. I'm also doing a little bit of rounding as a heads up. So I'm just kind of rounding accordingly. It's, again, going to be an approximation, and that's okay. And the last one. Okay, so 150 divided by 650. Which I'm reading on my end is about 22%. You could also find that last one just by taking 100% and subtracting all the others, of course. Okay, so we know that the percentage, if we're looking at the grand total, should be 100%. Now, you may have never done this before, so we can ballpark, and that's mostly what we're going to do. We could also come up with the measure of the angle. You can do this, that's fine. I think for our class, though, we're mostly going to focus on, again, just like a rough kind of estimate with that part. If you were curious to how to do it, you would just take the decimal and multiply by 360 degrees. However, I'm just going to say this part isn't quite necessary for us today. The reason being is, again, we're going to be either kind of roughly drawing it or using the computer. So feel free just to cross that section out if you're following along on hand. So now we're going to use these approximations and we are going to draw our circle graph or pie chart. The biggest tip I would say is to start with the biggest expense or the biggest percentage, whatever it is that you're working with. From there, I usually just go from biggest to smallest, and it's again just going to be kind of a rough estimate, all relatively in proportion. So the first one that I want to point out is clothing. Clothing is 33%. That's where I'm going to start. So I'm going to roughly start at about 33%. Okay, again, it's probably not perfect, and that's okay. So it's good practice just to put the item, so for clothing, and then you'll see in Google Sheets or Excel, whatever you use, often it's just divvied up with name of item and percentage. I'm also someone who likes lists, so I would just check off and move to the next biggest piece. Rent is 22%. It's just under a quarter. So if we had a right angle, it would look like that, about 25%. I'm just going to move it slightly. So that's more like 22%. Okay, so again, that was the category of rent for 22%. Now, those two pieces are by far the biggest. The rest, we're just going to kind of eyeball a little bit more. Entertainment would be technically the next biggest piece at 15%. So if you think about it, this right here is about a quarter. So 15%, we're looking at just kind of over halfway, about right there. Again, we're doing the best that we absolutely can. So again, that is for entertainment. Okay. Now we have the bulk majority of our percentages. Next, we have transportation and lunch. They are very close in value, so we want to make sure they look approximately correct. So this is like just a hair bigger, and this is just a hair smaller. Okay, I would say that works. Approximately, of course. Okay. I think visually it's just a little bit smaller, so that works. So we have transportation is 12%. And then we have lunch as 11. Okay, the last one, of course, would be the smallest piece, and you just want to make sure visually that it works, is your cell phone. And that one is just 7%. So it should be quite a bit smaller than the other pieces. Okay. And there you go. So now you have your pie or circle chart. Don't stress too much about the measure of the angle. We're just going to focus on those two portions.